When we think of evolution, we often imagine nature reshaping itself, animals adapting, environments transforming, and species emerging from struggle. But evolution is not just limited to biology. It echoes through our history, through our societies, and through our systems. And today, it echoes through cyberspace. So let's listen to those echoes and act on them. Let me take you back to 2017. The world had shaken up by the WannaCry cyber attack, a ransomware epidemic that shook around 150 countries. Hospitals shut down, governments stalled, and chaos rippled across continents. In the aftermath, a group of police officers belonging to different nations around the world, working for the International Police in Singapore, came not with answers but with uncertainty. Many of their governments had issued no guidelines, no policies, no frameworks. There was no international regulation to refer to for guidance. That particular moment was not just a crisis, it was actually a mirror. It reflected how our world had failed to evolve fast enough to meet the digital threat. While technologies surged ahead, our laws, our systems, and our cooperation lagged behind, still clinging to structures that were built for an offline era. My journey into this world didn't begin in front of a computer or a courtroom. It began in between disciplines. I was a computer science engineer, fascinated by systems and code. And then I went on to study management, law, policy, diplomacy, international security, all in order to understand this entire landscape and come out with a solution. But along the way, I realized that the world does not need more experts who speak in silos. The world needs translators, people who can speak the language of code and countries. In my work with various law enforcement organizations, nationally, internationally, in security and defense, I saw that there was the same story that was repeating again and again. Cybercrime was not some kind of niche concern anymore. It was actually a global epidemic. But the response? Disconnected, delayed, and deeply bureaucratic. I remember a case that changed everything for me. A farmer in Solapur in India had lost around 1 lakh rupees, his savings, to an international phishing attack. He walked into the police station hoping for help, but the crime didn't stop at his phone. It traveled across several servers in 3 different countries, used various cryptocurrency accounts, and it left no trails. Now, what do you tell that man? There is no system they're equipped to help him. The time, the cost, and the complexity of such a crime in order to recover that money is almost impossible. And this case is, by the way, just one of millions of cases that we see today. This is the real face of cybercrime. They are not headlines anymore, they are heartaches. Ordinary people losing their dignity and their savings to a faceless system. The digital jungle that we are living in today, what we call as the digital jungle, every keystroke, every connection, every click traces its way through this vast invisible landscape. In this jungle, predators don't wear masks or carry weapons. They actually use malware, misinformation, and manipulation. And yet, the laws that govern our protection were written much before smartphones or computers ever existed. Today, governments are pouring billions of dollars into creating new institutions, new schemes, new policies. But instead of building agility, we are building more silos. We treat cyber threats like check boxes, not like dynamic, evolving dangers they are. Therefore, in this case, we know that there is a positive intention. The intention is there. Governments pouring billions of dollars, police wanting to help, everybody wanting to solve this particular situation, cybersecurity professionals wanting to do it. It's all there. But in this particular case, as we see, it is not a failure of intention, it is a failure of evolution. So what if we evolve? Now imagine if evolution goes through our institutions. Now imagine if instead of building new bureaucracies, we build new bridges. Enter cyber diplomacy. Cyber diplomacy is not about diplomats and data. It's about recognizing that cyberspace needs its own language of cooperation, something that blends the precision of technology with the compassion of diplomacy. We need cyber diplomats, people who understand firewall and foreign policy, encryption and empathy, people who can understand the language between code and country, who can act swiftly across borders, who can understand the urgency of these threats and the human cost behind them. Imagine a world where every international organization, every national or governmental institution, every critical infrastructure sector entities having its own cyber diplomat, someone trained not just in response, but in anticipation. They would be our new diplomats of peace, not across physical borders, but across the digital frontiers. Take, for example, a critical infrastructure system. So we are having a massive critical infrastructure. However, because of increased digitizations, they are whispers away from collapse. For example, our power grid, our hospital systems, our financial systems, water supply systems, our transportation networks, All of them are connected digitally. When the attack happens, we still rely on the outdated playbooks, the slow-moving institutions, and the overloaded investigators. We react sluggishly when we should be agile. What if instead we had cyber diplomats who step in the first sign of trouble, liaison between countries and companies, speak to a security expert on one hand and a treaty lawyer on the other hand, and ultimately get all the experts to join hands in order to solve this particular case? Who liaison in order to cut through red tape, coordinate responses in real time, not just react but resolve. Let me paint a few pictures of why this matters a lot nowadays. It's not just theoretical threats, they're actually happening right now to people like you and me. Consider, for example, our cars. Many years ago, a man who was driving in a highway in a small town named St. Louis in California, he was driving his Jeep Cherokee at around 70 kilometers per hour when the unthinkable happened. Without warning, the air condition turned full blast. Music, it started blaring, and the windshield wipers, they went crazy. The driver's accelerator stopped responding, and the Jeep, it went into a full crawl. Two hackers sitting miles away were having control of his car. Now imagine if this would have happened to a family traveling at night. Now, first of all, this was a controlled experiment. It was a controlled experiment by security researchers, and it was a wake-up call for the automobile industry. But imagine if this would have happened to a family driving home at night when suddenly his smart car gets hacked and the hacker demands ransom amount of money to give back the control. Now consider our ports. Many years ago, there was one of the largest shipping companies that was attacked by a ransomware attack, which was infamously known as the NotPetya ransomware attack. This particular attack had caused the company around $300 million. There was a huge cyber attack that had affected many ports, from the Mumbai port to the port of Rotterdam. Cranes completely sat idle and the computer screens were blank. The entire supply chain, around 80% of the global supply chain, relies on maritime transportation, the export imports that we bring in. But this was all completely jeopardized. So you can imagine what kind of an effect it would have on our global economy. This is also true to fast forward last year, when there was a cyber attack on South Africa's ports. The port of Durban and the port of Cape Town were attacked. Drivers in trucks were lined up wanting to deliver food, medicines, and essential supplies. They were waiting for weeks in sweltering heat because the port systems were completely hacked. And imagine the ripple effect it will cause. For example, the factories that were there in East Africa, they're waiting for parts from ships that never arrived. Imagine the supermarket shelves in Europe going completely empty because the food supplies and essential goods are all stuck in containers somewhere in the sea. This is not just for our ports, it's also for our navigation system. So now consider our open ocean. Many years ago, in the year 2017, there was an attack on around 20 ships that were navigating the Black Sea. What had happened was the navigation system of the ship, it showed that the ship were placed around 32 kilometers inland on top of a hill at an airport. Thankfully, in this case, the captain, they relied on their tools, their intuition, their other tools that they had used, not the IT systems, and they came out of this particular situation. But if a navigation system can be tricked with a GPS spoofing attack, it can also be sent to hazardous waters and into coalition with some other ship. The risk over here is not only cyber, it is also risk to our lives. It is risks to our economy. In all these three cases that we have seen, we see that cyber diplomacy brings in a solution. Therefore, cyber diplomacy is not a utopian dream. It is the necessary next step into our global evolution. If we risk losing our entire system to a cyber attack, then the solution is what cyber diplomacy brings. This particular situation is very personal to me because I started my journey as a computer science engineer and I saw that there was an entire gap between legal, managerial and other systems. And the solution actually comes in bringing all the disciplines together so that there is a better or holistic understanding of cyberspace. Now I leave you with one last scene. Imagine the farmer looking into the phone, not knowing his savings are gone. The police wanting to help but stuck in a system that was not evolved. And the cyber diplomat standing in between them and the world connected, ready and prepared. That's the evolution we need. Let's echo it together. Thank you.